For me, activism is any coherent set of activities aimed at improving governance outcome. I think I want to start by defining what it means to me personally. This might not be what it means in the dictionary, but this is to me any coherent set of activities aimed at improving governance outcome. And when many people hear of the word activist, what they usually think of is fists in the air, boots on the ground. But that's only half of the equation, because for me there is collaborative activism and there is combative activism. When I go to my village and I see a primary school that is dilapidated and I want to draw attention to it, I can take a picture and post on Twitter. It will cause ruckus and perhaps force the government to take action. Or I can take that evidence and I ask myself, who is responsible for this? Alright, it might be the head of the education board at the local government. It might be the commissioner for education. So I can take the same picture, seek out the person, write to the person, or go to the person's office, and I get there. They say, oh, you can't see her today. And they say, when is the visiting day? They say, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Then the next Tuesday I go to there and then I'm able to show her the pictures. And perhaps she's surprised, she doesn't know. And then after 4 or 5 months of engagement, I have attention brought to that issue. I have that issue resolved. I am an activist. Now, no shots fired. So anytime you've identified a problem, you want to ask yourself, what is the best strategy to get my result? Can I get this by shouting and embarrassing the government? Can I get it by walking into the office and reasoning with the person involved? Can I also get it out by mobilizing broad citizens to engage in the subject matter? So when you have looked at the problem and you've identified, and I believe that the biggest risk for me about activism is that people don't clearly think out what the issues are, what the solutions are. Sometimes they might just be running around with a great zeal, but may not have that knowledge. So you want to target your activism, who is responsible, and then how can I get to him? So when you've identified the problem, you've identified the solutions, you've identified the stakeholders involved, you now design your engagement strategy. Do I collaborate with these people? Do I walk into their offices, present myself, introduce myself, write a letter, show them who I am, and then consistently follow up on this issue over an extended period of time, and then the issue gets solved? Or do we get to the boots on the ground, which is combative? Now, many times I've seen that there are issues you can solve with collaboration, but people start fighting unnecessary fights. So I think that we want to clearly state that activism is not just what you do in the streets or on Twitter, that activism is what you also do in the boardrooms, dinner tables. You can also, attend social functions, call the person, give them your piece, and we've also seen that incredible results can be achieved this way. That's the first point. After I have defined what it means to me, combative and collaborative approach, I can now then go on to say that the biggest risk anybody faces is actually being in a country that is not working. Many people look at activism and they think that it is risky. No, it is not. The greatest risk Nigerians face is by being in Nigeria. And because for me, bad governance will always be worse than oppressive governance. So let me clearly define the two terms. Bad governance, you all know the manifestations. You go to the hospital, no oxygen. You have an emergency attention, no emergency healthcare system. You need education, it's not there. You need employment, it's not there. You need security, it's not there. You know all the manifestations of bad governance. Even till today, trucks still fall off Ojeleba Bridge in Lagos. Even till today, as we speak, many people died last night as a result of preventable healthcare issues. If they were in places where healthcare was working, they would not have died. As we speak, more people are dying due to malaria. As we speak, more people are denied bed spaces in our hospitals. So those are the dangers and the risk of living in a country where there is bad governance. Now let's go to oppressive governance. Oppressive governance means that I have now said, oh, I'm tired of living in bad governance. Now I want to demand for oxygens to be in my hospitals, right? I want to be sure that there is somebody to attend to me if I have a health care need. And I think that that's the biggest risk people face. That you're facing the risk of bad governance. Now, when you now say, let me draw attention to this bad governance, either collaborative or combative, the people will say that they will kill me. And I say to people, look, if you calculate all the number of people who have been arrested, killed, kidnapped, maimed, the Delegiwas of this world, the NSAS of this world, the end bad governance of this world, the Pidom Nigeria of this world, and everything in between, the Mazi Nnamdi Kanus of this world, that if you take all those numbers and put them together from 1960 till today that we speak, that the numbers of people who have been arrested, kidnapped, killed, tortured on the account of their demand for good governance pales in comparison to the number of people that die weekly as a result of bad governance. And this is where it gets serious, because a lot of people don't give much thought to this. Take all the people they've arrested, from 1960 till now. Put them all together. They've killed, they've maimed, they imprisoned. It is not up to the number of Nigerians who die weekly, on a weekly basis. If you take 1960 to now and compress all the people, and then put it on one side, and take out that as Excel, and start calculating number of people who died due to insecurity, and then in the insecurity, you decluster it, maybe put kidnapping for ransom, put ritual killings, put the other ones, put one chance, put all of them together, put it on one spreadsheet. Put the people who die as a result of breakdown in healthcare system. Just take healthcare and insecurity alone. But those are not the only two places Nigeria kill Nigerians as a result of government recklessness. But take those two because those are the major contributors. Put them together and you see what the numbers are. So I tell people, the greatest risk you face while living in Nigeria is just by merely living in Nigeria, not by demanding for good governance. So if we then realize that by just being in Nigeria, every Nigerian stands more risk of being kidnapped by Fulani headsmen than being kidnapped by police or by military or by any of those agencies of government on the account of their demand for good governance. So if we have agreed that the risk, it's actually riskier to live than to demand, then you now see, okay, what are those demands really? And who are those people? What can we do to make it happen? Now, sometimes you might require boots on the ground. You mobilize people, go to the streets. Sometimes it might require writing a letter. Sometimes it might require knocking on doors. But then the last point I will make in this early introductory stage is that now that I've said define activism, it can be collaborative, it can be combative. And I said the greatest risk is by just merely breathing Nigerian air. And then the third point I want to make before I pass the mic back to you is that I see people who punch way above their weight. And that's where they see the risk. Now, you live in a community and there are inherent needs in this community. Maybe the roads are bad. Maybe the healthcare system is not working. Maybe there is a dilapidated primary school or secondary school or whatever it is that the government can give attention to. And then you can actually influence outcomes for that primary school. And at this stage of your life, this is where your social capital, your name recognition, the money in the bank, and everything that can provide you social safety, if, for instance, the people in the government push back. This is at your weighted category. Okay, let me use boxing as an instance. There are different categories of boxing. There is the lightweight, the featherweight, the cruiserweight. Now, I'm not an expert in that regard, of course. But I'm saying that they are weighted. You can't be weighing 50 kg and you're going to fight someone weighing way above your category. And the men are in sizes. Influence grows over time. Many people want to start out criticizing the federal government, start out criticizing the state government, start out shouting, making noise. And I tell you this, on the account of Biafran activism, many people don't know this. There are many countless of individuals in their hundreds who have been imprisoned right way before Wazirike. They are still serving prison sentences till today. Some of them have never seen a court one day, but they are still in prison today on the account of their Biafran advocacy. But look at Nnamdi Kanu. He's almost the only discussion that is heard about that. Now, if you go saying the kind of things Nnamdi Kanu says without having the kind of clout Nnamdi Kanu has, if you are picked up, chances are that you will not get the cavalry that you need. So what I advise people to do, if your influence level can get 2 more books to the primary school near you, get it done. If your influence level can get the debts in your streets cleaned out, get it done. If your influence level can now desilt the gutters around you, get it done. Don't just go criticizing, punching way above your weight. As you grow in influence, as you grow in weight, you can now pick up additional battles. I see people who have not killed the lion, they've not killed the bear, but they jump out to kill Goliath. And I say to them, one fling of his knife, your head is gone. Thank you so very much, sir.
Wow, that is really, really Chima there with a lot of things to reflect on, to think about, and to maybe also adjust ourselves on the basis. I like the thing that you said, that activism is not just what you do with your fist or with your boots on the streets. There is activism at various different levels. So immediately you're already de-risking it by knowing the suitable category to fit into. I also love what you talked about being an activist at your weight level. And that immediately also helps to de-risk things.
So you see, when you set out to achieve an objective, you ask yourself, now if you factored in all the three things we've said earlier, what you might want to add is you do the political economic analysis, the analysis. So this problem is what I want to solve. Can I solve it? Can I attempt it? What are the, you said, threats involved? And look, none of us here can, despite all that is going on in Nigeria, remove that threat to life and remove that threat to incarceration from Nigeria, at least in the next 10 to 15 years. You can't. You can't. You can't. So this is the reality. You see, this is what is on ground today. Now we want it to be better, but you don't start counting from better. You start counting from where you are. So usually, some of the things I tell my friends is, who do you want to serve? Assuming you've identified a localized problem you want to solve, and then you don't want to punch above your category. Who do I want to serve? Is it myself or the society? So because you see, from my experience, and if you talked to me 2-3 years ago, I would have been more guns blazing than now. But then I've had an experience. I've done a video by the mercies of God that did over 5 million impressions. Nothing changed, except of course that if I go to the airport now, more people know me, but nothing changed. But I've also written a letter, just one letter, and then things change. I can have a conversation. If I want, as a senator, that this is a problem a senator can solve, I go to their website, I pick up the number, and I have a telephone conversation. Honorable Senator, distinguished, this is my number, this is who I am, this is what. And then eventually you will see the senator saying the same thing you said to him on the phone, on the floor of the Senate. So I've also seen where I send an SMS and it makes much more impact than doing a tweet that got 1,000 retweets. So what you usually want is, am I looking for impression? Am I looking for impact? Because there are some times, and again, I want to say this, you cannot get a country and neatly divide it into the oppressor and the oppressed and get it working. You can't. The people in government are human beings. Now, I know that there are several bad people in government, but there are other good ones. And then some of the ones in government feel overwhelmed. Some of the lawmakers feel that they don't have anything to add. They feel that the problem is intractable, they can't solve it. I have spoken to governors today, current governors, they feel so overwhelmed. They don't know what to do, despite all the flashy cars and all of those things. So you can't divide it into oppressor and the oppressed. You want to collaborate at some point. And then when it gets to the fist fights, you want to also be ready to do the fist fight. So the point I want to make is, who do you want to serve? And what are you looking for? Publicity or noise or impression versus impact? Because sometimes you can make impact without making noise. And other times you can make noise and impact. Other times you can make noise without impact. So it's again, you have to do that evaluation. Then you have to have realistic expectation. Rome was not built in a day. The civilizations that we compare Nigeria to, they don't arrive at that place in one day. I know about the incarceration, all the bad things that are happening, but I see people who have oversized expectation. You see a problem that is this bad, and you want to turn it to this good in one night. It does not happen. Even growth is a gradual process. So I think that people, when they are engaging in activism, should taper down their expectations to reality. Again, let me conclude with this. Okay, the last 2 points I'll make before I pass, and I'll try to make it quickly because of time. When I hear people say, we have done all our best, and the last option is now to engage, I ask, are you sure you've done your best? And because I used to have that mindset until recently. Now, what do I mean? Nigerians complain, Nigerians do this, but we complain to each other. We complain at the airport. Sadly, laws are not made at the airport. We complain in the bus station, at the filling station, you nag in the church, everywhere, at the mosque. Sadly, the person you are complaining to does not have the resources to carry out the ideas you are giving to them. So many times I find that it will be more impactful when you have a complaint. You find who is responsible and make the complaint to the person. Now, tweeting about it may not, of course, there's the media and publicity aspect of advocacy, right? But then there's also the identifying the stakeholders, understanding what their issues are, what the perspectives are, what the bottlenecks are, and then try to work your way around it. And the last thing I will say is this, that the best gift any advocate can give to Nigeria, any activist can give to Nigeria, is the gift of improving themselves. The most dangerous activist is the one that can think clearly, the one that can write clearly, and the one that can speak clearly. If you can think well, can write well, can communicate your points better, you can use it to mobilize your fellow citizens, but you can also use it to get the people on the supply side of governance to understand what you're talking about. And then it's not enough to know what the problems is. We must force ourselves to go deeper than knowing what the problem is, because if you pass the mic around now, everybody knows the problem of Nigeria. But then if you now start empaneling ideas to solve it, you will see that that's where we run into problems. And I have seen many people cross from the side of complaining to the side of being in government. And their loyalties to the states did not change. Their loyalties to the people did not change. Now, there are people who have changed loyalties. But there are people who have seen, Oga, I am incompetent. That I might be a vocal critic of the government. But that does not mean that I have given the issues I'm criticizing much thought. That if roles reverse tomorrow, and I find myself sitting at the executive table, can I solve this problem clearly? Can I do this? You talk about doing any problem, take it out, any problem. So I tell people, invest yourself in knowledge, improve yourself, because the more you improve yourself, the more you are able to attract attention, the more you're able to make impact in what you're saying. Again, you can't neatly divide any country into victims and oppressors and get it working. We must find those openings, no matter how little, to collaborate. And when it becomes obvious that we'll fight, then we can now make sure that we have all the tools. Anybody who is organizing a protest must put down money, put down bail. I know a person in Nigeria today, before he grants any interview, makes any tweets, his international passport is always with him. He has money ready. He has lawyers. He has media network that is on standby to keep repeating that they've arrested him till they bring him out. If you don't have that kind of system around you, don't go saying those kind of things. And that's what I tell people. Maybe at the level where you are now, you can influence the head teacher of the primary school near you to change their school, to change something about it, to maybe add more food to the school feeding program they are doing. You can actually influence the PG of your town. You can actually influence, and this is at your weight level. You can do that. But many times we ignore those and start fighting unnecessary battles that we are not prepared for. And then when things like this happen, I sympathize with the many victims of Nigeria. But I tell them some of these problems are needless if you can just punch at your weight category per time. Thank you. My dear brother Francis, I think we need to develop new philosophies, right? The old textbooks cannot work in Africa. We have to develop indigenous thinking to our problems. The only thing that Francis needs to change from his class to the next class is one letter. Now, someone could hear you here on the platform. A governor may be listening and then instructs his SSG, writes this guy, give him an appointment to become a special advisor. And in one day, just through one letter, you don't have to paste posters, you don't have to run for election. You move from where you think you are now to become the class you are complaining about. The political class. And will all your experiences for 16 years, 20 years change as a result of one single letter of appointment? No, sir. No, sir. I think we have to find out that this thing, and again, I tell you this, whether you complain whether Nigeria is a democracy or a democracy or whatever crazy you call it, that's at that level. But we must realize this is where we are at today. If you don't recognize this, you can only break yourself against that recognition. You must find out, detach, decouple emotions from here and think clearly. I mean, there are sometimes the best gift an activist can give is his life, because his work is done when his blood is spilled. There are other times the best gift an activist can give is to give his freedom, because the best time to draw attention to the issues he's talking about is while in incarceration. But if you don't have that name recognition, if you don't have that level of influence, if you die, it would have been for nothing. If you are imprisoned, it would have been for nothing. So you must have this clearly written that this is where I am, this is the country I'm living in. It's not, you can't be thinking, devising strategies for an El Dorado. You have to devise strategies for the now. Nigeria can bite, and they are beaten, and they continue to bite. So if you're going to engage Nigeria, you must realize this and begin to act in ways that while you are engaging to bring outcome, you're also doing it in such a way that you have a responsibility to your family and you have a responsibility to your society. Now, as an activist, you don't have that influence yet for your incarceration to be a plus to the society. If you are incarcerated, the activities or the issues that you want to bring attention to is now incarcerated because they have removed one more voice from the streets. Now you have to engage. That's what I beg you, to detach emotions from this thing and think logically through these problems, and then maybe we can find a common point of entry. Again, my own experience is this, that I've made noise, no impact. And then I've also made little noise and sometimes impact. Thank you, sir. Every Nigerian is an activist. If you've ever complained about anything to your neighbor in the bus, at the marketplace, you've ever complained about the increase in fuel, you are an activist. It's just that many times your activism is not channeled to where they can receive attention. So my closing shots to Nigerians is to try to channel our energies to where they can receive attention per time. Thank you so very much for the incredible opportunity. I believe sincerely that Africa's morning is at hand.